Walk it off. Stop being a baby, my father yelled as I lay motionless on the ground. My brother stood smirking while Mom accused me of ruining his birthday. But when the paramedic saw I couldn't move my legs, she immediately called for police backup. The MRI would reveal. You know those moments that shatter your world, the ones that divide your life into a before and an after? I remember mine like it was yesterday, the brutal day my own family's cruel betrayal left me paralyzed, lying motionless on concrete while my brother laughed. My father just told me to walk it off, and my mother accused me of ruining a party. They had no idea that their casual dismissal of my suffering would soon make them criminals, forever changing not just my body, but the very definition of my life. Growing up in the Matthews household felt like constantly walking on razor-thin ice. From the outside, we were the picture of suburban perfection, a beautiful home in Massachusetts, a successful accountant father, a homemaker mother, and 2 children excelling at everything. But beneath that polished surface, a toxic current flowed, threatening to pull me under. My father, Douglas Matthews, was a towering figure, both physically and emotionally. He stood 6 feet 2 inches of pure stoicism, convinced that any display of emotion was a weakness, a lesson hammered into him by his military father. And, tragically, he passed that same brutal philosophy down to us, especially to Jason, his firstborn, his golden boy. Audrey, you need to toughen up, was my father's constant refrain. Whether it was a scraped knee, a broken heart, or a genuine illness, his response was always the same: minimize, dismiss, move on. My mother, Eleanor, wasn't much better. She'd offer rare glimpses of nurturing, but her unwavering loyalty always lay with my father and, more disturbingly, with Jason. She was a perpetually nervous woman, terrified of upsetting the fragile balance of our home. If acknowledging my pain meant rocking that boat, she chose denial every single time. Your brother would never complain about something like that, she'd say, her words cutting deeper than any physical wound, drawing comparisons that always left me feeling lesser, unworthy. Then there was Jason, 3 years my senior, now 31. He was the golden child, the son who could do no wrong in their eyes. Athletic, charismatic, and chillingly manipulative, Jason quickly learned he could get away with anything as long as he maintained his perfect facade for our parents. I still remember being 7, Jason 10. He pushed me off my bike, leaving me with a broken wrist. When I cried to our parents, Jason, with wide, innocent eyes, claimed I'd fallen on my own because I was clumsy. They believed him without a second thought. At the hospital, my father lectured me about being more careful, while my mother fretted about the medical bills. Not once did they question Jason. This pattern, this insidious cycle, continued through my entire childhood and into adulthood. Jason would torment me with pranks that weren't just mischievous, they were cruel. And our parents? They would either completely ignore his behavior or, even worse, blame me for provoking him. When I was 12, Jason locked me in our terrifyingly dark basement for hours during a thunderstorm, knowing I was petrified. When I finally escaped and confronted my parents, they accused me of making up stories for attention. At 16, Jason sabotaged my science project the night before it was due, ensuring I failed. When I told my parents, they simply suggested I should have been more prepared, not left everything to the last minute. By the time I hit adulthood, I'd learned to keep my distance. I moved out at 18 for college in another state, coming home only for major holidays, for family events. I carved out a life for myself as an elementary school teacher, found friends who genuinely cared, and started therapy to untangle the knotted mess my upbringing had made of me. But family ties, even toxic ones, are stubbornly hard to sever completely. No matter how much I tried to build boundaries, guilt and obligation always pulled me back into their orbit. Which is why, when my mother called, her voice dripping with expectation, insisting I attend Jason's 31st birthday celebration, I reluctantly caved. It had been 6 months since I'd seen any of them, and a tiny, foolish part of me hoped that time and distance might have somehow softened things. It would mean so much to your brother if you came, my mother chirped, though I deeply doubted Jason cared one bit about my presence. We're having a backyard barbecue, and your father is setting up the new pool deck. Everyone will be there. By everyone, she meant Jason's obnoxious friends, most of whom were just as entitled as he was. The thought of an afternoon with them made my stomach churn, but I was out of excuses. Fine, I'll be there, I agreed, already regretting it. Wonderful. And please dress nicely. You know how important appearances are to your father. That comment stung, exactly as it was intended to. My mother knew I'd recently embraced a more casual style, trading in the preppy outfits my parents approved of for clothes that actually made me comfortable. It was a small act of rebellion, but in the Matthews household, even the smallest deviation from their expectations was treated as a major transgression. As I hung up, I tried to mentally brace myself. I'd go, make small talk for a few hours, give Jason a generic card with some cash, and leave as soon as it was socially acceptable. I told myself I could handle one afternoon of discomfort if it meant several more months of peace. What I couldn't have known, couldn't have even imagined, was that this birthday party would be the last time I would ever walk without assistance. That the casual cruelty of my family would escalate to a point of no return. That my parents' refusal to take my pain seriously would cross the line from emotional neglect straight into criminal negligence. I packed an overnight bag, determined to stay at a hotel rather than my childhood bedroom. Even that small boundary felt important, a silent declaration that I was no longer under their control. I chose an outfit that would pass my father's inspection, but still felt like me: dark jeans, a blue blouse, comfortable flats. Appropriate for a casual party, but not so formal I felt like I was playing dress-up. As I drove the 2 hours to their house, I practiced the grounding techniques my therapist had taught me. Deep breathing. Visualization. Reminding myself I was an adult now, with the power to leave if things became too much. But all the therapy in the world couldn't have prepared me for what awaited me. No amount of deep breathing could prevent the catastrophe that was about to unfold, or heal the physical and emotional scars that would follow. I arrived at precisely 2 p.m., timing my entrance to coincide with the official start of the party. It was a deliberate strategy to minimize one-on-one interaction. In a crowd, it's easier to blend in, to avoid becoming the sole target of their laser-focused attention. The driveway was already packed with expensive SUVs and sports cars belonging to Jason's friends. I recognized a few, including the red Corvette of Tyler, his best friend, who had been just as complicit in tormenting me through the years. My mother greeted me at the door with a flimsy air kiss and a quick once-over that silently confirmed my outfit had passed inspection, if just barely. "Audrey, you made it. Everyone is out back. Your brother just opened his presents." Of course, they'd started the gift-giving without waiting for all the guests. It was a subtle, yet potent, reminder that my presence wasn't essential, merely tolerated. The living room was littered with expensive wrapping paper, the remnants of an extravagant gift-opening session. I spotted a new set of golf clubs, designer clothes, and what looked like keys to some kind of vehicle. "We got him that jet ski he's been wanting," my mother informed me proudly, gesturing to a photo of the watercraft atop one of the larger boxes. "Your father is having it delivered next week." I nodded, feeling the familiar, bitter pang of inequity. For my 30th birthday, just 6 months earlier, they had sent a gift card to a department store. The disparity was nothing new, but it still hurt. I placed my own offering, a simple card with $200 inside, on the table, then followed my mother through the house to the backyard. The scene that greeted me was exactly what I'd expected: about 30 people, mostly men in their early 30s, drinking beer, lounging around the brand-new pool deck. My father, the ultimate suburban patriarch, was at the grill, flipping burgers and steaks with precise, almost ritualistic movements. Jason, naturally, was holding court near the pool, surrounded by his usual entourage. He had a beer in one hand, gesturing animatedly with the other, no doubt regaling his friends with some exaggerated tale of his own importance. He'd gained weight since I'd last seen him, his once athletic frame now showing the effects of too many late nights and too little exercise. When he spotted me, he detached from his group and approached, his enthusiasm forced, the kind you offer a distant acquaintance. "Little sis, you decided to grace us with your presence after all." His words were friendly enough, but the gleam in his eyes was anything but warm. He pulled me into a hug that was too tight, too aggressive, a physical reminder of the power dynamic that had defined our relationship for decades. "Happy birthday, Jason," I replied, extracting myself as quickly as possible. "The place looks great. Dad spent a fortune on that new deck," he said, gesturing to the gleaming wooden structure surrounding the in-ground pool. Custom-built Brazilian hardwood, cost him nearly $20,000. Again, the unspoken comparison hung in the air. Our parents would spare no expense for Jason's comfort and status, while my needs had always been treated as burdensome impositions. I excused myself to get a drink, choosing water. I knew from experience I needed to keep my wits about me, not make myself more vulnerable to their manipulation. For the next hour, I managed to avoid direct interaction with my family, engaging in polite conversation with some of the other guests. There were a few spouses and girlfriends present who seemed equally uncomfortable with the increasingly rowdy atmosphere, and we formed a quiet alliance of outsiders. But as the afternoon wore on and the alcohol flowed freely, I could feel the energy shifting. Jason and his friends grew louder, their behavior more obnoxious. They started reminiscing about high school, swapping stories that invariably involved humiliating someone they deemed beneath them. Eventually, inevitably, Jason turned his attention to me. "Hey, remember that time we convinced Audrey that the neighbor's dog had rabies?" he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. She was so scared she refused to go outside for a week. His friends roared with laughter, and I felt my cheeks burn with the familiar, sickening mix of embarrassment and anger. I'd been 8 years old when Jason and his friends told me that friendly Labrador next door had a deadly disease and was going to attack me. The fear had been utterly real, as had the nightmares that followed. Or the time we switched her shampoo with hair removal cream. Tyler added, slapping his knee as if this act of cruelty was the height of comedy. That particular prank had happened when I was 14. I'd been forced to wear hats to school for weeks while my hair grew back in patches. My parents had simply told me to stop being so dramatic. I took a deep breath, my limit reached. I started to gather my things. No obligation to family was worth subjecting myself to this kind of public humiliation. But as I turned to leave, Jason intercepted me. "Leaving so soon? The party's just getting started." His words were slurred, his eyes unfocused. He was drunk, which always made him more unpredictable, more dangerous. "I have a long drive back," I said firmly, trying to step around him. But Jason blocked my path. "Come on, sis. Loosen up. Have a drink with us. For old time's sake." I knew this routine, the forced camaraderie that would inevitably lead to some new form of public humiliation. I'd fallen for it too many times. "No thanks, Jason. I really need to go." His face hardened, the mask of friendliness slipping away to reveal the raw cruelty beneath. Still the same uptight Audrey. Some things never change. I walked away, heading toward the sliding glass door that led back into the house. I just needed to grab my purse from the living room, say a quick, polite goodbye to my parents, and I could escape this toxic environment. But fate, or perhaps Jason's malice, had other, far more devastating plans. To reach the house, I needed to cross a section of the new pool deck. As I stepped onto the wooden boards, an immediate, chilling sense of wrongness washed over me. The surface felt strangely slick beneath my flats. I glanced down and noticed a faint sheen on the wood, almost imperceptible unless you were actively looking for it. In that terrifying moment, a sickening dread coiled in my gut. I knew what was about to happen, but it was already too late to prevent it. My foot slid forward, violently, throwing me off balance. I tried desperately to catch myself, arms flailing wildly, but the slipperiness was too complete, too deliberate. My other foot shot out from under me, and I felt my body falling backward. Time seemed to stretch, distort. I could see Jason and his friends watching, their expressions a chilling mixture of anticipation and cruel amusement. I saw my father turning from the grill, my mother pausing mid-conversation with another guest. And then came the impact. Not with the wooden deck as I'd braced myself for, but with the unforgiving concrete lip of the pool. My lower back and head struck simultaneously, a double blow that sent a searing, electric current of pain shooting up my spine and exploded like fireworks behind my eyes. I heard someone scream, a raw, primal sound, and only later would I realize it had come from me. The world tilted and spun, colors blurring together as my vision swam in and out of focus. When things finally stabilized, I was lying flat on my back, staring up at the clear blue sky. The pain in my head was excruciating, a pounding drumbeat of agony. But what terrified me more, what sent a cold, paralyzing dread through my veins, was what I couldn't feel. Anything below my waist. "Help!" I gasped, my voice barely audible, even to my own ears. The impact had knocked the wind out of me, and I was struggling to breathe, to force air into my burning lungs. "Please help me. I can't feel my legs." The first face that appeared in my field of vision was Jason's. He was looming over me, his features distorted by the bright sun, and to my horror, he was smiling. "Nice prank, sis. Very dramatic." He turned to his friends, a smirk playing on his lips. She always was a theater kid. I tried to move, to sit up, to prove him wrong, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My arms worked, but when I attempted to shift my legs, there was nothing. No response, no sensation, just a terrifying void where the lower half of my body should have been. I'm serious. I cried, my voice stronger now, edged with pure panic. Something is wrong. I can't move my legs. I think I hit my back on the concrete. Jason rolled his eyes, still utterly convinced this was some elaborate performance on my part. Come on, get up. You're embarrassing yourself. I can't get up. I was openly crying now, hot tears of pain and fear streaming down my face. Please call an ambulance. I think I'm really hurt. By this point, a small crowd had gathered around me, drawn by the commotion. I could see curiosity and discomfort on their faces, but no one was moving to help. They were taking their cues from Jason, assuming this was just another bizarre family drama playing out for their entertainment. My father pushed through the onlookers, his face set in a mask of irritation. What is going on here, Audrey? Why are you on the ground? Dad. I sobbed, a fleeting wave of relief washing over me. Surely my father would take this seriously. I slipped and fell. I hit my back on the pool edge. I can't feel my legs. I need to go to the hospital. I expected concern. Urgency. Immediate action. What I got instead was a dismissive scoff. For God's sake, Audrey, the deck is perfectly safe. I just had it installed by professionals. He gestured impatiently. Walk it off. Stop being a baby. You're making a scene at your brother's party. His words hit me like a physical blow, worse than the concrete impact. Even now, even when I was literally unable to move, my pain was being dismissed, my experience invalidated. Douglas, maybe we should help her up, my mother suggested, appearing at his side. But her concern wasn't for my well-being. People are watching. I can't get up. I repeated, my voice rising with raw desperation. I need an ambulance. Please, Mom. Dad, I'm begging you. Something is seriously wrong. My mother knelt beside me, her voice lowered to an angry whisper. Audrey Matthews, that is enough. You have always been jealous of your brother's attention, but this is taking things too far. You are ruining his birthday party with this performance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The pain in my back was intensifying, radiating outward in waves that made it difficult to concentrate. My head throbbed where it had struck the concrete, and I was starting to feel nauseated. I think I'm going to be sick, I moaned, turning my head to the side. She's probably drunk, I heard Jason tell someone nearby. Classic Audrey. Can't handle her alcohol. I hadn't had a single drink all day, but facts had never mattered in my family's warped narrative about me. The sun beating down on my face made the nausea worse. I was sweating profusely, and a strange tingling sensation had started in my fingertips. I knew these were bad signs, possibly indicators of shock or internal bleeding. Please, I whispered, no longer having the energy to shout. I need help. My father had walked away, returning to the grill as if nothing was happening. My mother was making excuses to the other guests, telling them I'd always been prone to episodes, and they should just continue enjoying the party. Jason had lost interest entirely, moving back to his group of friends, who were now loudly discussing plans to take the new jet ski out the following weekend. I was alone, immobile, in agony, surrounded by people who were actively choosing to ignore my suffering. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut, sharper than any fractured bone. Then, from the edge of my fading consciousness, I heard a new voice, firm, authoritative, female. Excuse me, I'm a nurse. Let me through, please. The crowd parted, and a woman I didn't recognize knelt beside me. She had kind eyes and capable hands that immediately went to my wrist, checking my pulse. Hi there, I'm Rachel. I work in the ER at Massachusetts General. Can you tell me your name? Audrey, I managed to say through chattering teeth. I was cold now, despite the summer heat. Okay, Audrey, I need you to stay very still. Can you tell me what happened? I explained about the fall, the brutal impact with the pool edge, and the immediate, terrifying loss of sensation in my legs. Rachel's expression remained neutral, but I could see a flicker of deep concern in her eyes. She leaned closer and spoke quietly. I'm going to check a few things, but I don't want you to move at all. Okay. She gently pressed her fingers against various points on my legs, asking if I could feel the pressure. I couldn't. She asked me to wiggle my toes. Nothing happened. I'm calling an ambulance, she announced, pulling out her phone. She doesn't need an ambulance, my mother protested, suddenly reappearing, her voice tight with panic. She just needs to get up and stop making a fuss. Rachel fixed my mother with a level, unwavering stare. Ma'am, your daughter has signs consistent with a spinal cord injury. Moving her could cause permanent damage. She needs emergency medical attention immediately. For the first time, a flicker of genuine, stark fear crossed my mother's face. Spinal cord injury? That's impossible. She just slipped. Falls are one of the most common causes of spinal injuries, Rachel replied, already dialing 911. And from what I can see, she hit the concrete edge quite hard. As Rachel spoke with the emergency dispatcher, describing my condition and location, I saw my father approaching. His expression had shifted from mere annoyance to profound apprehension. "What is all this about an ambulance?" he demanded. Rachel, still on the phone, held up a hand to silence him. After giving the dispatcher the necessary information, she turned to address my father. "Sir, your daughter has potentially suffered a serious spinal injury. The paramedics will be here in about 10 minutes. Until then, it is absolutely crucial that she not be moved." My father's face went pale. For the first time, I think he was beginning to realize that this was not an act, not an attempt to steal attention or disrupt the party. This was real, and it was devastatingly serious. "How did this happen?" he asked, looking around as if searching for someone, anyone, to blame other than himself. Through the fog of pain and fear, I managed to speak. "The deck was slippery, like it had oil or something on it." My father's eyes narrowed. "That's ridiculous. I just had it sealed yesterday. It shouldn't be slippery at all." But Rachel, ever observant, was already examining the wooden boards near where I had fallen. She touched the surface, then rubbed her fingers together. "This is not water," she said, her voice hardening. "This feels like some kind of lubricant." All eyes turned to Jason, who had wandered back over to see what the commotion was about. His face, flushed from alcohol moments before, suddenly drained of all color. "It was just a joke," he muttered, not meeting anyone's gaze. "Just a little prank. I put some of Dad's deck oil on a few boards. I thought she would slip a little and maybe fall in the pool. I didn't think." He trailed off, the terrible implications of his actions finally seeming to dawn on him. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, as I lay immobile on the ground, I saw the ugly truth of my family reflected in their faces, the casual cruelty that had defined our relationships, the willful blindness to the harm they caused, the reflexive protection of Jason at all costs. But this time, there would be consequences they could not ignore away. In the distance, the wailing sirens grew louder, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the backyard. Rachel remained steadfast by my side, monitoring my condition and keeping everyone else at a distance. "Try to stay calm," she said softly. "Help is almost here. Just focus on your breathing." I was trying, but panic kept threatening to overwhelm me. The numbness in my lower body was a terrifying void where sensation should be. Each breath sent new waves of pain through my back and head, and the nausea was intensifying. The party guests had begun to disperse, moving away from the scene, murmuring among themselves. Some were already leaving, clearly not wanting to be involved. Others watched from a distance, their expressions a mixture of morbid curiosity and discomfort. My mother hovered nearby, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by a frantic, nervous energy. She kept straightening her clothes, touching her hair, small, agitated gestures that betrayed her anxiety about how this would appear to others. "Do you really think this is necessary?" she asked Rachel. "Maybe we could just take her to urgent care ourselves?" Rachel's response was firm, unwavering. "Absolutely not. She needs proper immobilization and transport. Any improper movement could worsen a spinal injury." My father had gone to the front of the house to direct the paramedics, while Jason stood frozen several feet away, the reality of what he had done finally seeming to sink in. The paramedics arrived with remarkable efficiency, 2 women and a man in uniforms, wheeling a stretcher through the gate to the backyard. Rachel immediately briefed them on my condition and the horrifying circumstances of my fall. The lead paramedic, a woman named Sarah, knelt beside me. "Hello, Audrey. I'm Sarah. We're going to take good care of you. Can you tell me where the pain is worst?" "My lower back," I managed to say, "and my head. But I can't feel anything below my waist." Sarah nodded, her expression professional but kind. "We're going to put a cervical collar on you to stabilize your neck, and then we'll carefully log roll you onto a backboard. It's important that you don't try to help us move you, okay? Just stay as still as possible." As they worked, Sarah asked questions about the fall, how it happened, and whether I had lost consciousness. Rachel filled in details about my vital signs and the initial assessment she'd done. Then Sarah asked a question that changed everything. "Was the surface where you fell naturally slippery, or was there something on it that caused you to slip?" Before I could even answer, Rachel spoke up. There appears to be some kind of oil or lubricant on the deck boards. I believe it was placed there deliberately. Sarah paused in her work, looking up sharply. Deliberately? Can you elaborate on that? Her brother admitted to putting deck oil on the boards as a prank, Rachel said, her voice level, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of anger. He intended for her to slip. Sarah and the other paramedics exchanged glances. Then Sarah turned to look at Jason, who was standing with his hands shoved in his pockets, staring at the ground. Sir, is that accurate? Did you intentionally create a slipping hazard that caused this injury? Jason shifted uncomfortably. It was just supposed to be a joke. I didn't think she'd get hurt like this. Sarah's expression hardened. She turned to her colleague. Mike, can you check the deck surface and document what you find, please? Mike nodded and moved to examine the area where I had fallen, taking photos with a small camera and collecting a sample of the substance on the deck. Meanwhile, the paramedics continued methodically to immobilize me. They placed a rigid collar around my neck, then carefully positioned themselves to roll me as a single unit onto the backboard. On my count, Sarah instructed 1, 2, 3. They moved me with practiced precision, but despite their care, the movement sent fresh agony through my body. I cried out, unable to suppress the sound. I know it hurts, Sarah said sympathetically. We'll give you something for the pain as soon as we have you secured. Once I was strapped to the backboard, they transferred me to the stretcher and began attaching monitoring equipment. Sarah placed an oxygen mask over my face and inserted an 4-line into my arm. Your blood pressure is quite low, she noted, frowning at the monitor. And your heart rate is elevated. We need to get you to the hospital right away. My mother finally seemed to grasp the true severity of the situation. Is she going to be all right? She asked, her voice small lost. Sarah didn't offer false reassurance. She has signs consistent with a significant spinal injury. The sooner we get her to a trauma center, the better her chances for recovery. As they prepared to move me to the ambulance, Mike returned from inspecting the deck. He spoke quietly to Sarah, showing her something on his camera screen. Her expression grew even more serious. Based on what I'm seeing here and the circumstances described, I'm going to request police assistance, she announced. Police, my father sputtered, returning from the front yard, his face red with indignation. Surely that's not necessary. This was just an unfortunate accident. Sarah fixed him with a level gaze. Sir, deliberately creating a hazardous condition that results in serious injury is not just an accident. Additionally, I understand there was a delay in seeking medical attention for your daughter despite her reporting loss of sensation, which is a medical emergency. My father's face flushed with anger. Now, wait just a minute. You can't come into my home and make accusations like that. Dad, I said weakly from behind the oxygen mask. Please, just let them help me. For once, my father fell silent. Sarah made a call on her radio, requesting police presence at the scene. Then she turned back to me. We're going to move you to the ambulance now. The ride might be uncomfortable, but we'll do everything we can to keep you stable. As they wheeled me through the house and out to the waiting ambulance, I caught a final glimpse of my family. My father arguing with Mike, gesturing angrily. My mother standing with her arms wrapped around herself, looking utterly lost. And Jason, still rooted to the same spot, watching as the consequences of his lifelong cruelty finally, inevitably, caught up with him. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was a police cruiser pulling into the driveway, lights flashing but sirens silent. In that moment, despite the pain and fear and uncertainty, a strange, powerful sense of validation washed over me. For the first time in my life, someone was finally taking my suffering seriously. The ambulance pulled away, carrying me toward an uncertain future, but also away from the toxic environment that had caused me so much pain. As the medication they administered began to take effect, dulling the worst of the physical agony, I closed my eyes and surrendered to unconsciousness. I awoke to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors and the antiseptic smell that seems universal to all medical facilities. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure of where I was or how I had gotten there. Then the memories came flooding back, the fall, the terrifying numbness, the paramedics, and finally, the police arriving at my parents' house. A nurse noticed I was awake and approached my bedside. Welcome back, Audrey. I'm Carlos. You're at Massachusetts General Hospital. Do you remember what happened? I fell, I said, my voice raspy from the breathing tube that had apparently been removed at some point. At my brother's birthday party. I couldn't feel my legs. Carlos nodded, making a note in my chart. That's right. You've been in and out of consciousness for about 12 hours now. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss your condition with you. Can I get you some water?" I nodded gratefully, and he helped me take small sips through a straw. Even this simple movement caused pain to flare in my back. "What's wrong with me?" I asked, fear making my voice tremble. "Can I still not move my legs?" Carlos's expression was compassionate but professional. "The doctor will explain everything. She should be here any minute. Try to stay calm." As if on cue, a woman in a white coat entered the room. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Good morning, Audrey. I'm Dr. Martinez, the neurosurgeon who has been overseeing your care. How are you feeling?" "Scared," I admitted, "and in pain." "What happened to me? Why can't I feel my legs?" Dr. Martinez pulled up a chair and sat beside my bed. "When you fell, you suffered what we call an incomplete spinal cord injury at the T12, L1 section, which is in your lower back. The impact fractured 2 vertebrae and caused significant compression of your spinal cord." She showed me images from my MRI on a tablet, pointing out the damaged areas. "We performed emergency surgery to remove bone fragments and reduce the pressure on your spinal cord. We also stabilized your spine with rods and screws." "Will I walk again?" I asked, the question that had been terrifying me since the moment I lost sensation in my legs, finally breaking free. Dr. Martinez didn't offer false hope, but neither did she extinguish it entirely. Spinal cord injuries are complex and outcomes can vary widely. The fact that yours is an incomplete injury is actually positive news. It means the spinal cord was not completely severed. She continued, explaining that over the coming weeks and months, we would get a clearer picture of how much function I might recover. Some patients with similar injuries regain significant mobility, while others experience more limited improvement. A lot will depend on your individual healing process and how diligently you work with physical therapy. "So, I might be paralyzed forever?" The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. "I wouldn't use the term forever at this stage," Dr. Martinez replied carefully. "But yes, you are currently experiencing paraplegia, which is paralysis affecting the lower limbs. We will work with you to maximize whatever recovery is possible, but you should be prepared for the possibility of long-term mobility challenges." The news hit me like a physical blow. I had entered my brother's birthday party as a healthy, vibrant 28-year-old woman, and I was leaving it with a life-altering disability. All because of a prank and my family's refusal to take my pain seriously. "There's something else we need to discuss," Dr. Martinez said, her tone shifting slightly. "The circumstances of your injury have prompted an investigation. There are 2 police officers waiting to speak with you when you feel up to it." I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing this information. "My brother put oil on the deck," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He admitted it. He wanted me to slip as a joke." Dr. Martinez nodded. "That is consistent with the information we received from the paramedics. And there seems to be some concern about the delay in seeking medical attention for you after the injury occurred." "My parents didn't believe I was really hurt," I said, the familiar pain of their dismissal washing over me again. "They told me to walk it off. They accused me of being dramatic and trying to ruin Jason's party." A flash of something, anger, perhaps, crossed Dr. Martinez's professional demeanor. "In cases of suspected spinal cord injury, immediate immobilization and medical attention are crucial. Delays can significantly worsen the outcome." "Are you saying that if they had called an ambulance right away, I might not be paralyzed?" The implications of this were almost too much to bear. "It's impossible to say with certainty," she replied carefully. "But yes, in general, the sooner a spinal cord injury is treated, the better the prognosis. Every minute counts." I felt tears spilling down my cheeks. The injury itself was devastating enough, but knowing it might have been less severe if my family had simply believed me was an additional layer of betrayal I was not prepared for. Dr. Martinez gave me a moment to process, then asked, "Do you feel up to speaking with the police now, or would you prefer to rest first?" "I'll talk to them," I decided. "I want them to know what happened." She nodded and left to get the officers. Carlos stayed, adjusting my position slightly to make me more comfortable and offering tissues for my tears. The police officers who entered were both women, which somehow made me feel safer. They introduced themselves as Detective Sullivan and Officer Chin, explaining that they were investigating the circumstances surrounding my injury. "We understand this is difficult," Detective Sullivan said gently. "But we need to ask you some questions about what happened yesterday." I recounted the events as clearly as I could remember them, arriving at the party. Jason's cruelty, my family's shockingly cold response to my injury. "So, to be clear," Detective Sullivan clarified after I finished, After you fell and reported that you couldn't feel or move your legs, no one called for medical assistance? Not until Rachel, the nurse who was at the party, intervened, I confirmed. That was at least 15 or 20 minutes after my fall. My father told me to walk it off. And my mother accused me of trying to ruin Jason's birthday. Officer Chin, who had been taking meticulous notes, looked up. And your brother admitted to putting oil on the deck? Yes. He said it was supposed to be a prank. He thought I would slip and fall into the pool. He didn't think I would hit the concrete edge. The officers exchanged glances. We should inform you, Detective Sullivan said, her voice grave, that we have already taken statements from several witnesses at the scene, including the nurse, Rachel Cooper, and the paramedics who transported you. We have also collected evidence from the deck, which confirmed the presence of deck oil in the area where you fell. She paused, letting her words sink in, before continuing. Your brother, Jason Matthews, was taken into custody last night on charges of reckless endangerment, resulting in serious bodily harm. Your parents, Douglas and Eleanor Matthews, are currently being investigated for negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance. The news stunned me. As much as my family had hurt me, I had never imagined them facing criminal charges. They could go to jail? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That will be up to the district attorney and ultimately the courts, Detective Sullivan replied. But yes, these are serious charges, especially given the severity of your injuries. They asked a few more questions, then thanked me for my cooperation and left, promising to keep me updated on the investigation. After they were gone, I lay in the hospital bed, trying to process everything. The physical reality of my injury was overwhelming enough, but the legal and emotional implications of what had happened were equally staggering. No one from my family had called or visited. I wondered if they were legally prevented from contacting me, or if they were simply continuing their lifelong pattern of avoiding accountability for the harm they caused. As evening fell, a hospital social worker named Marcus came to see me. He explained that he would be helping coordinate my care plan, including rehabilitation options and resources for adjusting to life with a spinal cord injury. You're looking at a significant recovery period, he told me gently. After you're stable enough to leave acute care, you will likely need to spend several weeks in an inpatient rehabilitation facility, followed by ongoing outpatient therapy. I live alone, I said, the practical implications suddenly hitting me with crushing force. My apartment has stairs. I teach elementary school, which means being on my feet all day. Marcus nodded, understanding. These are all challenges we will help you navigate. There are resources available for home modifications, vocational rehabilitation, and disability benefits. It's a lot to take in right now. I know. Indeed, it was. In the space of 24 hours, every aspect of my life had been upended. My body, my home, my career, my family relationships all transformed in ways I was only just beginning to comprehend. That night, alone in my hospital room, I cried for everything I had lost and everything that now lay uncertain before me. But beneath the grief and fear, a small, defiant spark of determination began to glow. I had survived my family's lifelong emotional abuse. Somehow, I would survive this too. And for the first time, they would finally face real consequences for their actions. The weeks following my injury passed in a blur of medical procedures, pain management, and the first tentative, agonizing steps toward rehabilitation. I remained in the hospital for 14 days, during which time the full extent of my injury became clearer. Dr. Martinez explained that while the surgery had been successful in stabilizing my spine and relieving pressure, there was significant damage that would take time to heal, if it healed at all. You have what we call an Asia C classification, she told me during one of her daily visits. This means you have preserved some motor function below the level of injury, but it's not strong enough to be functional. You also have some sensory preservation, which is a positive sign. I had begun to regain some sensation in my thighs and occasional tingling in my lower legs, which the medical team considered encouraging. However, I still had no voluntary movement below my knees and minimal strength in my hip and thigh muscles. The physical aspects of recovery were challenging enough, but the legal proceedings added another layer of complexity. 10 days after my injury, I received a visit from a woman named Laura Jensen, who introduced herself as an assistant district attorney. The police investigation into your case has been completed, she informed me. Based on the evidence collected and witness statements, we have filed formal charges against your brother and parents. Jason was facing a felony charge of reckless endangerment, resulting in serious bodily injury, which carried a potential sentence of up to 10 years in prison. My parents were charged with criminal negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance, which could result in up to 5 years of incarceration if they were convicted. Of course, these are the maximum penalties, Laura explained. Actual sentences would depend on many factors, including prior criminal history, which none of them have, and whether they accept responsibility by pleading guilty. She also informed me that I had the right to file a civil lawsuit against them for damages, regardless of the outcome of the criminal case. Medical expenses for spinal cord injuries can run into the millions over a lifetime, she said. Not to mention lost wages, pain and suffering, home modifications, specialized equipment, and ongoing care needs. It was overwhelming to think about. Part of me wanted nothing more than to simply cut all ties with my family and focus solely on my recovery. But the practical reality was that I was facing enormous financial challenges as a direct result of their actions. Laura put me in touch with a personal injury attorney named Michael Greenberg, who specialized in spinal cord injury cases. He visited me in the hospital the following day, patiently explaining the process of filing a civil suit and what I could reasonably expect. "Your case is strong," he told me after reviewing the police reports and medical records. "The liability is clear, especially with your brother's admission that he deliberately created the hazardous condition." He explained that my parents' homeowner's insurance would likely cover some damages, but for the full compensation I deserved, we would need to go after their personal assets as well. The thought made me deeply uncomfortable. Despite everything, these were still my parents. But as Michael gently pointed out, my new reality would include extensive medical bills, potential lifelong care needs, and a significantly altered earning capacity. "This is not about revenge," he assured me. "It is about ensuring you have the resources you need to live as full and independent a life as possible." I agreed to let him file the lawsuit, a decision that felt both absolutely necessary and incredibly heartbreaking. Meanwhile, my physical recovery continued. After 2 weeks in acute care, I was transferred to a specialized spinal cord injury rehabilitation center. The facility was modern and well-equipped, staffed by a dedicated team of physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and rehabilitation nurses, all focused on helping patients like me adjust to life after spinal cord injury. My primary physical therapist was a man named David, who combined unwavering optimism with pragmatic realism. "Our goal is to maximize whatever return of function you experience," he explained during our first session. "But equally important is learning to be as independent as possible with the function you have right now." The days at the rehabilitation center fell into a demanding routine. Mornings began with 2 hours of physical therapy, focusing on strengthening the muscles that still functioned and learning transfer techniques to move from bed to wheelchair and back again. Afternoons included occupational therapy, where I learned adaptive techniques for daily living activities, from dressing myself to cooking from a seated position. There were group sessions too, where I met other people with spinal cord injuries at various stages of recovery. Some had been injured years ago and returned periodically for tune-up therapy. Others were newly injured like me, still raw, still adjusting to the radical shift in their lives. One of these patients was a woman named Tara, who had sustained a similar injury in a car accident 2 years earlier. She used a combination of leg braces and forearm crutches to walk short distances, though she relied on a wheelchair for daily mobility. "It gets easier," she told me one evening during the patient dinner hour. "Not the physical stuff necessarily, though that does improve with time. I mean, the emotional adjustment. Right now, everything in your life is defined by your injury. Eventually, it becomes just one aspect of who you are, not your entire identity." Her words, delivered with a calm strength, gave me a flicker of hope during the darkest moments, when the future seemed impossibly bleak. There were days when I made progress, managing to stand between parallel bars with the support of leg braces, or experiencing new flickers of sensation in my feet. There were also brutal setbacks, infections that delayed therapy, moments of raw despair when the sheer magnitude of what I had lost overwhelmed me completely. Throughout this time, I received no contact from my family. My attorney informed me that they had been instructed by their legal counsel not to communicate with me directly due to the pending criminal and civil cases. Part of me was relieved. Another part felt the chilling absence as yet another abandonment. Friends and colleagues from the elementary school where I taught stepped in to fill the void. They organized a rotation of visitors to break the monotony of hospital life, brought home-cooked meals, and even set up a fundraising campaign to help with expenses not covered by insurance. Their unconditional support was a balm to my soul. 3 months after my injury, The criminal cases against my family moved toward resolution. Jason, facing the harsh reality of a felony conviction, accepted a plea deal, admitting to reckless endangerment in exchange for a 5-year sentence, with 2 years to be served in prison and 3 on probation. My parents also took plea agreements, receiving 2 years of probation and 400 hours of community service each, along with mandatory counseling. The civil case took longer to resolve. Michael, my attorney, deposed each family member, collecting their sworn testimony about the events leading to my injury. The process was grueling, emotionally draining, but necessary, forcing them to acknowledge under oath the reality of what they had done. 6 months after filing the lawsuit, we reached a settlement. My parents' homeowner's insurance paid out its maximum liability of $1 million. Additionally, my parents agreed to sell their house and liquidate a significant portion of their retirement savings to create a trust fund of an additional $2 million for my ongoing care needs. It was a substantial sum, enough to cover my immediate medical expenses, modifications to make my apartment accessible, and provide a much-needed financial cushion as I figured out what my professional future might look like. But no amount of money could restore what I had lost, both physically and emotionally. By the 8-month mark after my injury, I had made what my medical team considered remarkable progress. I had regained some function in my leg muscles, enough that, with specialized braces and a walker, I could take short, labored steps. It was not true walking, not the easy, unconscious movement I had once taken for granted, but it was more than many with similar injuries ever achieved. I was discharged from inpatient rehabilitation, continuing with outpatient therapy 3 times a week. I moved back to my apartment, which had been modified with ramps, wider doorways, and an accessible bathroom. A part-time caregiver helped with tasks I couldn't yet manage independently. I also began the process of reimagining my professional life. While returning to classroom teaching didn't seem feasible, the school district offered me a position as a curriculum specialist, a role I could perform largely from home with occasional visits to schools. Throughout this period of physical recovery and practical adjustment, I was also engaged in another, deeper kind of healing, working with a therapist named Claire, who specialized in trauma and family dynamics. What happened to you is not just a physical injury, Claire pointed out during one of our sessions. It was the culmination of a lifetime of emotional abuse and neglect. The paralysis in your legs is visible, but there are other invisible wounds that need healing too. With her guidance, I began to process not just the trauma of the injury itself, but the deeper, insidious patterns of family dysfunction that had made it possible. The constant invalidation of my experiences, the golden child and scapegoat dynamic between Jason and me, the way my parents had consistently prioritized appearances over my well-being. "Your family failed you in the most fundamental way," Claire said, her voice gentle but firm. "They had one job, to protect you and care for you. Instead, they caused you harm and then refused to acknowledge it." Acknowledging this truth was incredibly painful, but ultimately, it was liberating. It allowed me to see that my injury, devastating as it was, had also, paradoxically, freed me from the toxic family system that had caused me so much suffering throughout my life. "Do you think you will ever reconcile with them?" Claire asked during one session. I considered the question carefully. "I don't know. Part of me thinks there's no coming back from this. Another part wonders if these legal consequences might finally force them to confront the reality of their behavior. Either way," she said, "your healing does not depend on their acknowledgement or changes. It is something you do for yourself." And slowly, painstakingly, that is what I began to do, heal not just my body, but my sense of self, my understanding of what family truly should be, and what relationships I deserved in my life. As I approached the 1-year anniversary of my injury, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Jason, writing from prison. The envelope sat unopened on my kitchen table for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. Inside was a lengthy, handwritten apology, the first genuine one I had ever received from my brother. He wrote about the therapy he was undergoing in prison, how he was finally confronting the person he had been and the profound harm he had caused. He made no excuses for his behavior and asked for nothing in return, not even forgiveness. "I understand if you never want to hear from me again," he wrote in conclusion. "I wouldn't blame you, but I wanted you to know that I'm truly sorry for the pain I have caused you. Not just on that day, but throughout our lives. You deserved so much better." The letter left me with complicated feelings. It seemed sincere, but I wasn't ready to let Jason back into my life if I ever would be. Still, there was a certain, bittersweet closure in having my experiences finally acknowledged by someone who had been there, someone who had contributed so deeply to my pain. My parents never reached out directly, though I heard through mutual acquaintances that they had moved to Florida, starting over in a smaller house with whatever assets they had managed to retain after the settlement. They had apparently told a sanitized version of events to their new community, painting themselves as devoted parents supporting their daughter through a tragic accident. The truth, as always in my family, had been reshaped to protect their image. But their narrative no longer held power over me. I had learned that my truth did not require their acknowledgement to be valid. My pain did not need their recognition to be real. This has been perhaps the most profound lesson of my journey, that validation must ultimately come from within. For someone raised to doubt her own experiences, to question her own pain, this realization has been revolutionary. I have also learned about the true meaning of family, that it is not necessarily defined by blood or legal ties, but by who shows up when you are at your most vulnerable, by who stays when staying gets difficult, by who sees your pain and responds with compassion rather than dismissal. My chosen family has grown exponentially over these 2 years. It includes Sarah, the paramedic who first recognized the seriousness of my injury and ensured I received proper care. Rachel, the nurse who intervened when no one else would. David, my physical therapist who pushed me to achieve more than I thought possible. Claire, who helped me navigate the treacherous emotional landscape of trauma and recovery. And now Thomas, a physical therapist specializing in neurological injuries, who I met through my advocacy work. Our professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship and, more recently, into a tentative, hopeful romance. He sees me for who I am, not defined by my disability, but not ignoring it either. With him, I am learning what healthy love feels like, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care. Last month, I completed my master's degree in educational psychology, specializing in trauma-informed teaching practices. Next fall, I will begin a new position as a consultant for the school district, training educators to recognize and support children experiencing various forms of trauma, including family dysfunction. It feels like a way of honoring my own journey while creating meaning from the pain I have experienced. Perhaps that is the ultimate form of healing, not erasing the wound, but transforming it into something that serves a purpose greater than oneself. My paralysis will always be part of my story, as will the family dynamics that contributed to it. But neither defines the entirety of who I am or what my life can mean. Sometimes, when I'm with Thomas or surrounded by friends, laughing and fully present in the moment, I realize with a jolt that I am happy, not despite what happened, but in a way that incorporates it into a larger narrative of resilience and growth. Other times, usually late at night when pain keeps me awake, I still struggle with anger and grief for what was taken from me, the physical abilities I lost, the family relationships that, even if toxic, represented my primary attachments for 28 years, the sense of safety in the world that may never fully return. But even in those dark moments, I am no longer alone with my pain. I have learned to reach out, to allow myself to be vulnerable with those who have earned my trust, to accept help without shame, to acknowledge my limitations without being defined by them. If there is wisdom to be gained from trauma, perhaps it is this, that our wounds shape us, but they need not determine us. That even the deepest betrayals can become catalysts for profound transformation. That sometimes it takes being broken to discover just how much strength we contain. I don't know what the future holds. My doctors say I may continue to see small improvements in function for up to 5 years post-injury, though the most significant gains typically occur in the first 2 years. I may walk more easily someday, or I may not. Either way, I will continue to build a life that accommodates my reality while stretching the boundaries of what seems possible. What I do know is that I am no longer the woman who entered that birthday party 2 years ago, desperate for approval from people incapable of truly seeing me. I am someone new, forged in the crucible of trauma and recovery, stronger in the broken places, as Hemingway once wrote. More authentic, more compassionate, more aware of both my vulnerability and my power. And that, perhaps, is the most unexpected gift to emerge from this ordeal, the discovery of a self worth fighting for, worth believing in, worth loving. If you are watching this and find yourself in a situation where your pain is dismissed, where your reality is denied by those who should protect you, please know that you deserve better. Your experiences are valid. Your suffering matters. And there are people in this world who will see you truly, if you can find the courage to reach beyond those who refuse to. Have you ever had your pain dismissed by someone who should have believed you? How did you find the strength to trust yourself when others wouldn't? Tell me your story.